Ooh-wee, that is nasty. G'day Jaffa Adventures, Terry King here, welcome to the channel. The Jaffa crew and I have just got back from a major tour up to Cape York. We put about 5,500 kilometers under our belt. And we were in some pretty extreme off-road conditions, and the truck is an absolute mess, both inside and outside. So I'm going to share with you today what I do to clean this thing up after a big trip, and the additional service items that I look at after a big trip such as this. So if that sort of stuff might interest you, stick around and have a look at what I'm going to get up to. So the first thing that I tackle after a big trip like this is gutting the interior and cleaning the interior. There's no use stripping down the outside, cleaning it, getting it all looking schmick, and then you open up to the inside and blow all that dust back out on the outside. So we'll start with the inside and work our way out. The dust sealing isn't bad in the 200s, but you can see that there is still quite a bit of crap in the inside. Quite a bit of dust sitting up on the dash, and of course I've still got all my gear and kit inside. So the first step is open all the doors up and get all the crap from inside. Let's do a bit of a time lapse on that one, shall we? Now, I turned the fridge off yesterday when we got home, and all of the frost and ice in here is melted. Now I've just got a pool of water in the bottom of the fridge. So let's deal with that. Pull our dividers out. Here's a little trick that a mate of mine told me about with the Waco fridges. The freezer section is where the coil is, and all of the fridge is cooled by simple spillover from the freezer section. So if you take these dividers and drill little holes in them, that'll help that spillover into the fridge section while maintaining your stuff frozen in the freezer section. It's a bloody good little tip. Here's another little tip. These are those anti-slide pieces of material. They're like a rubberized material you can pick up at pretty much anywhere. I put those in the bottom of the fridge, both the fridge and the freezer side, so that it stops the cage from bouncing around and scoring everything up. And if you have a look at the bottom of the fridge, it's actually in pretty good nick. And I put it down to these guys, saving it. Okay, now we just got to soak up all this water first. And it's red water, so I don't know whether that's red dust or blood from steaks and things. Now on the Wacos, you got this little flap that has to be opened up. And I don't know whether other fridges have them as well, but I guess it's like a little sump. And in behind that is a little piece of sponge. Make sure you get that out of there, because if you don't, that goes seriously manky. Now that the inside's all sort of sopped and cleaned out, I sterilize it. And I've got 95% ethanol here that I use, which is basically the faints from my distillation process. The reason I use the ethanol is because, one, it kills everything, and two, it's highly volatile, being 95%, and it volatilizes off very quickly and dries very, very quickly. And that's why I like using it over things like a chlorine-based solution, for example, which just takes a little bit longer to dry. This stuff will volatilize off in a few minutes. So I just go around and clean the entire interior, and I wipe the exterior of the cabinet down as well with the ethanol solution. Again, use whatever you got, but this is what I've got, and it works very, very well for me. Okay, the fridge is all dry, put it back together. Pop in our first divider with the holes. Pop in that little bit of plastic to protect the bottom. In with the cage. Second divider. Same thing in the fridge department. Tray. Temperature monitor for the fridge. Temperature monitor for the freezer. They're wireless and they go up to the front cab. And that's it, fridge done. When I pack the fridge away and it's not in use, I leave the lid ajar like that. Two reasons. One, it doesn't compress the little seal. And secondly, it allows it to breathe so I don't get any funkiness growing in there, even though I have sterilized it. Now I'll empty out the back completely. These drawers that I've got here are just cheapies from Big W. And I hold them together so they don't slide around with just a little bit of tape over the top of them. Works just fine. We've got a 2-burner stove. When I left, I had 8 full butane cans in here, and I had 2 full ones in the stove. And after a month camping, we're coming back with 4 full ones. So we only used 6 in total over the full 4-week period. And we were using that stove every day for breakfast and dinners. Small first aid kit. Tire repair kit. Didn't need that at all, which was great. And a 4-ton bottle jack, which again we didn't need, which was great. Now I'll do some of the easy stuff first, and that is vacuuming out this drifter drawer. So my modus operandi is to first hit this interior with a vacuum cleaner just to get the big chunky bits. And these are the sorts of things that I'm talking about. Just get all that big chunky crap out of there before I end up hitting it with an air hose. But remember, it is just a really, really quick vacuum because all the magic happens with the air compressor. We'll check that out in a sec. Now I will drain out the hog bag, which has still got about 100 odd liters of water in it, and I'll completely unpack the back of the car here. This is a casualty of the corrugations. That strap got ripped off that bag. Bag used to hang on the cargo barrier like that. So I'm going to have to find something a little bit stronger than that. My daughter's gonna kill me. She washed Sunny yesterday and she's been rolling around in that spare tire cover full of red dirt. Flip up our lid here. And I got recovery gear and travel buddy. Now that is it. The back of the car pretty much stripped. Now I'll get the vacuum cleaner out and vacuum up those big chunks. Now pulling this wrap off is much, much easier when the car is warm. Here's an example of what that wrap has done. I don't know whether the camera will show it, but this little section here, about 10 mil, didn't have any wrap on it, and it's all scarred up. And this section here is perfect. Now once I've gone through the car and vacuumed out all the big chunks, it's time for the air compressor. This is the best way to clean dust out of a car that I've found. So make sure you got all your doors open and make sure that your back is to the prevailing wind. What you'll need is some compressed air, obviously, some ear protection because this blows like a buggery, and then you just get stuck into it. What you absolutely don't want to do is hit that with any water before you blow that off, because if you do, that dust will just turn to mud and you get these big streak marks on your dash. So that's it. You just keep on blowing from front to back and do the entire car. Now I've gone through the entire car front to back and then back to front with the compressed air line. And you can see she's pretty bloody good. Inside here, no dust. I made sure I got along the cargo barrier on top of all the nooks and crannies where you would get. Down in the side wings. On top of the drawers themselves. Just in all the little nooks and crannies where dust might sit. And I also did the headlining as well. Don't forget that one. Now that that is all finished with the compressed air, Then I'll go through the car one more time, front to back with the vacuum cleaner, just to pull up the remaining dust that's in there, that's sort of embedded in the carpets. Shouldn't be a lot because the air compressor gets most of that out, but we'll do that one more time with the vacuum cleaner. But as you can see, so far, you'd never know that we did 5.5 kilometers through pretty extreme dusty conditions. The interior's coming up pretty doggone sweet. Anyway, back into it with a vacuum. Now the last step is I just wipe everything down with a damp cloth. I don't use any product on that other than water. And the idea behind that is that I do not want to use, product like Armor All or any of these sticky type products, because the minute I go back out into a dusty condition, all that crap and dust will just stick to it like the proverbial. So don't want that. We'll just use straight water. I use a white cloth so that I can tell when it's actually picked up enough dirt to change over to a new cloth. And you can see that I don't have any streak marks in there from any of this dust turning to mud. And that is the secret. You got to get rid of all that bloody dust before you touch anything with water or any sort of cleaning product. That's my experience anyway. Yours may be different, but this really does work for me. And this car was seriously feral on the inside when we got back from that trip. And no doubt a lot of people would think me crazy for this, but I actually don't mind detailing cars at all. I know there's some people out there that absolutely hate it with a passion, but I actually don't mind it. And when you don't mind it, it makes doing that little bit extra just that little bit easier, doesn't it? Now I've gone through the entire car with the water wipe, and you can see she's pretty much spotless. A little bit of dust blowing in from outdoors. No dust in the dash area. Steering wheel area is all clean. Indicator stalks are all clean. And you can see that there's no smear marks either. And there definitely would have been smear marks had I hit that with water before I de-dusted it. Back area is all looking good. Cargo barriers all wiped down. And the drifted drawer area all done, including the wings down the side. So that's it. My interior is now fully detailed. Time for me to put all the stuff back in the car that I pulled out, because that's where it lives, before we carry on to the outside of the car. Feels really good to get stage one done, I got to admit. So that's it. The second row seating area is finished. Close the door on that. Front of the car, done. Time to move on to the back of the car. Let the air out of the airbags. Just leave a small amount in so that they remain seated. That is that wing finished. It's now the following day. The interior is finished, as you saw, and I'm going to now start to peel off some of the wrap and the duct tape and start the exterior work on this car. And I suspect that that'll probably take me longer than a day, to be honest. That's how she comes up when you take that wrap off. I got the truck parked in the sun to soften up the glue on all of these bits of tape and bits of wrap, and I'll start peeling this stuff off. This guard here is the guard where I had lost the rhino hide, so to sort of bodge that up, just threw a bit of duct tape down over top of the guard, and it worked reasonably well. You can see underneath there, no bush pinstripes. These couple of massive big scrapes here that I'm gonna have to polish out. They must have gone there when that rhino hide got ripped off in the bush, because they weren't there when I put the rhino hide on. Now I got all the wrap peeled off of all of the areas that were not protected by the rhino hide. It's now time to hit the sucker with a bit of water. I'm going to wash the rhino hide panels in situ because it's just a little bit easier to do that when they're sitting in place. First stage, a really, really good hose down top to bottom and underneath. Yeah, I love playing with the dog. All right, hose down time. Now my full car rinse is finished, which took about an hour. There's a lot of stuff to rinse, and that was just the top side of the car. Haven't got to the engine bay, haven't got underneath yet. Before I pull the rhino hide panels off, I'll give them a wash because they're easier to clean in situ. That's it, all cleaned down. I'll just let that dry in the sun and we'll put it away. Now it's engine bay time. First thing I'm going to do is take off that intercooler cover. Just two 10mm captive nuts holding this thing on. That's it. Now my intercooler will probably be significantly more dusty than most because of the bonnet scoop channeling extra air through it. But that's the price you pay for a greater efficiency cooling system. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hose this engine bay down, but I'm going to pay particular attention to steering clear of the electrical areas. Things like the uni chip, I've got a fuse panel over there, top of the batteries, that sort of stuff. Okay, there's a slight hose down done, and I've just got some mild detergent with a really soft bristled brush. It'll just run over this intercooler so I don't bend the fins, and I'll run it over all the bits and pieces that I can reach. When I'm under here doing this, I'm also looking for anything that might be a little bit out of place. For example, that battery hold down clamp there's a little bit loose, and that's got a nylock nut on it as well, so that's wiggled slowly loose with that nylock nut in place. Far out. Those corrugations are just brutal. That's it. Now I'll just kick her in the guts, let the engine warm up and dry itself. Well, I've been at this for just on 2 hours now. What have I actually accomplished? The engine bay is done to my satisfaction. Dust gone, given a good clean down, all ready to be serviced when that time comes. The exterior of the car has all been hosed down, so all of the dust is off of it, which is great. What you see there now is just dirt, and I've pulled off all of the wrap that I had. For example, on the scrub bars, that was all wrapped, had that guard wrapped, etc. And I managed to hose off under the wheel wells. So that's how far I've got in 2 hours. Not very far, but it is progress. Next step, I'm going to break out the gurney, move the car to a dry patch of land, and climb underneath and blast her underneath with the gurney. Whew, well, done with the gurney. Oh, that probably took me another hour and a half underneath the car. So I'm probably in it now for 3.5 hours. I haven't even washed the car yet. But if we have a look up underneath of there, she is all clean. That red dust that you see on here, that is red dust that's stuck to the undercoat of the car because I sprayed it with Tectal about 6 months before we left. But she's finally clean under there after an hour and a half of gurneying. Whew! Copped a nice whack to the scrub bar there. All right, well, next up for me, get some dry clothes, get some lunch, and then come back out here and knock this thing over on the exterior with a proper wash. See you soon. And there we have it. After one full day of detailing, I finally got her finished. And if you can tell from my voice that I'm over it, you'd be right. That was a big day. Still got a few scratches to buff out. For example, see in the door handles here, the rhino hide covers here, but it doesn't cover the door handle, and I neglected to put some tape over top of those. So I've got fine scratches in that door handle that need to be buffed out. But where the rhino hide was is spotless. Fantastic. That trick of putting the felt on the back of those magnets is the go. All right, time to back this puppy back into the shed, close the shed door, have a warm shower, cold beer, call it a day. But what's next? The maintenance items. So check this out. That's a serious bit of coin sitting on that bench at the moment. All the fluids that I need to do the diffs, the transfer case, the engine oil change, an automatic transmission fluid flush, and a coolant change. And that is a crap ton of work and more than what this video is designed for. What I do have, however, are individual videos for each of those service items. So if that's of any interest to you, just have a look in the library. I've got a playlist called Landcruiser 200 series service items, and you'll see each of those service items as individual videos in there. Suffice to say that when I've come back from a serious off-road trip like that Cape trip, I do not go by the Landcruiser service intervals. I will go and replace every single one of those fluids. Is it necessary? Perhaps not. Is it great for my peace of mind? Absolutely. And you know what? That's what counts here. Peace of mind. You can't over-service your vehicle, but you can certainly under-service it. Now, one thing that I found when I was doing my under-car service was that these bushes they weren't completely flogged out, but they're heading in that direction. So I bought myself 2 of them, and they go on the rear stabilizer bar. In addition to that, this small bush that also goes onto the stabilizer bar, I'll replace that one as well. She was a little bit flogged out too. All right, I've undone the shutter valves on the KDSS, and I'll just run these off. There's our dead rubber, which, as I said, is not in too bad a shape. And there's our replacement. So the 4 ends go on this side. So it basically slides on like this. That spins around that way, and that's the way she was facing. Now, can I push that back up by hand? Looks like I'm gonna need a jack to jack that back into place. Now I've got my trolley jack jacking up the KDSS arm, which will allow me to pop this on. Sway bar bush on one side done. All right, these 2 sway bar bushes are now replaced. as is that little round bush there and that sway bar. And that was it. All the rest of the rubber bushes in the bottom here were in excellent condition after I checked them out after the big trip. There's the old bush. It's in not too bad a shape. The hole was just a little bit flogged out. And these bushes here, again, they weren't in too bad a shape. Just that little bit that cups around the sway bar got a little bit elongated. So rather than have a sloppy suspension, I've replaced them, and now she's nice and tight. Well, after my full vehicle inspection, the only other thing that I found wanting were the brakes. They were not flogged out during the trip, they just had normal wear and tear on them. The discs have got 180,000 kilometers on them. The brake pad's something less than that because I've changed them out a couple of times over the life of the vehicle. So I'm going to take this opportunity to do a full Monty brake upgrade on the car rather than just replacing the pads. And this is what I'm going to go with. So I've got myself a set of DBA T3 rotors and a set of DBA Extreme pads. So I'll be replacing all 4 rotors, all 4 pads, as well as the brake fluid, a complete brake fluid swap out as well. I don't tow, so the factory brakes for me have worked just fine, and I've never actually found them wanting. But when the modification bug has bitten you as hard as it's bitten me, hey, nothing is safe. That brake replacement is going to be the subject of an upcoming video, so if that turns your crank, hit that subscribe button and tune in a bit later. Did you get some useful tips here? Did you get some mindless entertainment? If you got either of those, I'll call this video a win. If you didn't like it, move on. Life's too short to be watching crap. If you've got some useful tips, post it down in the comment section below because I'd be really interested in reading those, and I'm sure other viewers would as well. Now, I'm going to keep my extra shiny side up, and I'd suggest you guys do the same. We'll see you on the next video. Bye now. That is nasty.